This lesson is adding and subtracting radicals. Here we have the first example, negative 3 radical 2 plus 3 radical 5 plus 3 radical 5. You can only add or subtract when they have the same radical. So here I have radical 2. There are no other radical 2, so I leave it alone. Next, here I have radical 5. Here I also have radical 5. They are the same radical, so therefore we add or subtract them. Here we have plus 3, here we have plus 3, so 3 plus 3 gives me 6 radical 5. Okay, again, you can only add if they are the same radical. Again, you can add or subtract if they have the same radical. And if you cannot add them, we leave them alone. So here in our situation, radical 2, radical 5 are not the same, so we are completely done. Okay, so again, when you add, subtract radicals, make sure they have the same radicals. Okay, next example. Here I have radical 24 and radical 26. They are not the same. However, we can change this 24 into 4 and 6. Okay, when you change, make sure you pick a number that can be square root. Okay, so one more time, I changed this 24 into 4 and 6. And the reason why I chose 4 and 6 is because 4 can be square root into this 2. Okay, again, I chose 4 and 6 because I can square root the 4 into 2. Okay, and then over here, I can't do anything about it, so I leave this one alone as is. One more time, I changed the 24 into 4 and 6 because 4 can be square root into 2. Okay, so this 4 square root into 2. Okay, and then 3 times 2 gives me the 6 radical 6. Bring down the 2 radical 6. Now they are the same radical, so we add or subtract. Okay, so again, you can only add or subtract if they have the same radical. So 6 subtract 2 gives me 4. Okay, and there's nothing else to do here, so we're done with that. Next example, it doesn't matter how many terms you have. Here you got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the same procedure. All right, so let's change this 24 into 4 and 6. Again, I choose 4 and 6 because 4 can be square root into this 2. Okay, this 27, I change it into 9 and 3 because square root 9 is 3. This square root 2 square root 6, I just leave it alone because there's nothing else to do. This 8 right here, I'm going to change to 4 and 2 because this 4 can be square root into 2. Okay, so again, 24 is changed into 4 and 6. 27 is changed 9 and 3. 8 is changed into 4 and 2. The reason why I use these numbers for 8, for 2, for 27, 9 and 3, 24, 4 and 6 is because the number can be square root. Okay, so next, bring down this 3. Square root 4 becomes this 2. Bring down the square root 6. Bring down the 3. Square root 9 becomes this 3 right here. Square root 9 becomes this 3. And then bring down this square root 3. The 2 square root 6, leave that alone. And then bring down the 2. Square root 4, this 2. And then bring down this square root 2. Okay, next we want to clean this up a little bit more. So 3 times 2 gives me this 6. 3 times 3 gives me this 9. This stays. And then 2 times 2 gives me this 4. Okay, next we will add and subtract same radicals, so combine like terms. So radical 6 and radical 6, they are the same term. So 6 plus 2 gives me 8 radical 6. All right, and here's a radical 3, but there's no other radical 3. Leave it alone. Here's a radical 2. There's no other radical 2, so leave this for radical 2 alone. And finally, you can't do anything about this because it is already solved. Okay, you cannot add or subtract because the radicals are not the same. Okay, so this is done. Next example, let's make this into a bigger a higher radical. So instead of square root, we do cube root. So it doesn't matter if we have cube root, fourth root, fifth root, it is the same procedure. Okay, so if you notice the first three examples, all I did was square root, and square root. Now the last example, I'm going to do cube root, but it's the same procedure. Okay, so one more time, I'm going to change this 16 into 8 and 2. The reason why I chose 8 and 2 is because cube root of 8 will become 2. Okay, so I changed 16 into 8 and 2. Why did I choose 8 and 2? Because this 8 can be cube root into 2. So cube root of 8, which is 2. Okay, this 16, same thing again. I'm going to change it to 8 and 2 because I know cube root of 8 will become 2. Okay, this right here, there's nothing to do, so I leave it alone. However, if there's no number in front, it's always a 1. Okay, so one more time, this 16 becomes 8 and 2. And the reason why I chose 8 and 2 because cube root of 8, which is 2. Same thing with this 16. I changed to 8 and 2 because cube root of 8, which is 2. Okay, so bring down this -3, cube root of 8, which is this 2. Bring down this cube root 2, bring down the 2, cube root of 8 here, which is this 2, and then cube root of 2, bring it down. Bring this one down as well because there's nothing to do. After that, we clean up a little bit. So -3 times 2 gives me -6. 2 times 2 gives me this 4. Bring down this 1 cube root 2. And then now if you look carefully, this is cube root 2, cube root 2, cube root 2. They are the same radical. Then you can add and subtract them. Okay, so one more time, the last step is make sure they have the same radical. Then you can add or subtract. Okay, so here I have cube root 2, cube root 2, cube root 2. Since this is -6, this is +4, this is +1, so -6 plus 4 gives me -2, -2 plus 1 gives me this -1 cube root 2. Okay, so this is the final answer for this example up here. Again, it doesn't matter if this was square root, cube root, fourth root, fifth root, and so on. The procedure are the same. Okay, so be very careful. All right.